We are looking at graphing absolute value functions. Now I know earlier this year we did some graphing of absolute value functions. We know if it's absolute value, it's going to always have that V shape. Earlier we picked values -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. And when we substituted in, we always got positive values. And we had 2, 1, 0, 1, and 2. So if we were plotting that, what we're going to be doing now is we're going to always be looking at this parent function. And when we think about our parent function of absolute value, we are talking about this function, y equals absolute value of x. And what we now want to take a look at is how does it change as we do some different things. So the key thing in understanding absolute value is this is our parent function. We can translate it. That means to shift the graph, it could be a horizontal shift, it could be a vertical shift, or it could be both. The resulting graph is going to be exactly the same size, shape, but a different position. So here you get to see the absolute value of x and the absolute value of x minus 2. Now, when you were graphing this, you probably made a table of values. And again, you substituted them in for -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. What we want to start looking at is we don't always want to make a table of values. You could do that to check it and check a few. But we want to try and think, how are these two graphs related? In that, what does that -2 do to our original parent graph? And if you look at this one, it looks like it moves it exactly down 2. So the graph is the same shape, but now it is 2 units lower than the corresponding graph, y equals absolute value of x. So when you have a -2, it translates it down 2 units. We are going to see this. This you want to highlight. Put this in your notes. The graph of y equals the absolute value of x plus k translates the parent graph. K, is it positive, it's going to move that graph up k units. If it's absolute value of x minus, it's going to move it down k units. So if we're looking at this graph, y equals absolute value of x plus 2, it should move our parent graph up 2. What would you think would happen if we are looking at y equals the absolute value of x plus 5? We would think it should move it up 5. And again, what you can do is once you've graphed it, you can do checkpoints. So you can check some of these points that we think should be working. If you need to pause the video as you're reading through this to think about what it does to the graph, please do so. So now we're going to take a look at what happens if it's the absolute value of x plus 2 and it's inside the absolute value sign, or x minus 2. Now again, if I was doing this, I would actually make a table of values. When I make that table of values, I would have had my x and my y, and I would have substituted in values. So when I substitute in -2, I get 0. When I substitute in -1, I get +1, and then I get 2. But so far, I'd want to also substitute in values like -3 and -4. And what I noticed from that parent graph is that when I have a +2, it moves it to the left. Now this is kind of opposite of what many of you would be thinking. Most of you think add 2, move right. It's going to move it to the left. And if you have a minus point, absolute value of x minus 2 is going to move it to the right that many units. So here's the other key thing you want in your notes. For a positive value h, when the absolute value of x plus h is inside that absolute value, it's going to move the graph x units to the left. If it's a minus h, it's going to move it to the right that many units. So here we take a look at our graph, absolute value of x plus 5. Since it's a plus, we need to be thinking left. And we're going to move that whole function over 5 points. And then we just plot our points. Now again, I definitely would want to do a check. Meaning, if I was plugging in my x, y values, I would want to check, well, what happens when I put in -5 and -4 and maybe -6, and make sure that I get at least these values so that I know I'm on track. Now it's your turn. We're going to graph, we're going to look at these together, these two equations using our translation. Remember where the parent function is? That starts at 0, 0, and it's a v. Because it's being a -4, -4 is telling us our graph are going to have that V shape. And again, on this side. And again, if I'm looking at this, one of the things I would definitely want to do is check for a few points and see that it makes my graph true. So I would definitely want to check at 0. And if I put in 0, I do get -4. And if I put in 2, absolute value 2 minus 4, I do get -2. This one, since it's a plus, remember, absolute value plus 2, just the opposite of what we're thinking. This one is going to move 2 units to the left. And again, we're going to plot our points. And then, once we've plotted them, do a few checkpoints. For example, I would definitely want to check maybe -4. I would definitely want to check when x is 0. And if it gives me the points, then I know I'm probably on track. Oh, we're getting a little trickier. I'm going to do the second one. You guys will do this first one. When you take a look at this second one, this is tricky right out in front because it's negative. And what that negative actually does is it inverts the V. So now our absolute value is going down instead of up. And if we look at what should the +2 do, +2 should move it to the left. And +4 is going to move our parent function up. So if we think this might be our parent function, y equals absolute value of -x, this would be the graph for y is equal to the negative absolute value of x. We now want to take a look at moving it up 4. So we're going to go up 4, and then we have to go to the left 2. We think this should be our vertex going down. And again, I'm definitely on this one picking a point to check because I'm not too sure. I think this is what, and hopefully you have a straight edge and can draw this a little better than I can. But as you are looking at this, we want to pick some points. So I'm definitely going to pick -2. If I am picking -2 in this graph, I'm going to put x and y. And if I pick -2, showing my work, I would have negative absolute value of -2 plus 2. Well, that's going to be 0, and the opposite of that is -0. +4 does give me 4. So far this point works. I'm also going to put in 0. If I put in 0, I believe I should be getting 2. Negative absolute value of 0 plus 2, that's the -2, plus 4 does give me 2. So far these 2 points have checked. I would probably check -4 also. So make sure you do that. And as you look at your graph up here, you want to now try to have this one done for class tomorrow. Be sure to tell me, what is the -3 doing to your graph? Is it moving it up or down? And what is the -1 doing? Is it moving it to the left or to the right? When you come to class tomorrow, we will take a look at these and we will continue doing some homework questions more with that absolute value.